Good morning. Thank you all for joining us for Stepping Up Kosher. It's a good sign of a class that's ongoing that I don't even remember what installment we are. We're like number 8 or number 9, somewhere there. Number 7 maybe, I don't know.
We did eggs. Oh.
We did eggs, and last week we even did anything that we are forbidden to eat because of danger.
Yeah.
But that causes forgetfulness, or maybe brings a ruach ra, or things like that, yeah.
Maybe wives' tales.
What?
Maybe wives' tales.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, I also want to wish a happy Father's Day to anybody on Facebook that's watching. Here, this morning there's only women for some reason. But,
We don't have any fathers.
yeah. Anyways, so good morning. Thank you all for joining us for Stepping Up Kosher this morning. And today we are going to be talking about Betikat Mazon Litolaim, which means checking food for bugs. Okay? And the source of this prohibition comes from the Torah. There's a verse in the Torah that says, Al tashaktu et nafshotechem, do not make your soul, do not abominate your souls, do not make your souls disgusting. Bechol hasheretz hashoretz, with any creepy, crawly bugs. V'lo titamu b'hem, you should not become impure from them. V'yitkadishtem v'yitem kedoshim, you should be holy, and you should become holy. Ki kadosh ani, because I am holy. V'lo titamu et nafshotechem, you should not make your souls impure.
And where is that found?
That verse is from the book of Leviticus, the book of Vayikra, Perek Yud Aleph, chapter 11, Psukim. The verses are verse 41 through 44. Okay? And there are 3 categories of creepy crawly, of insects that the Torah doesn't allow, and they are insects that fly, insects that crawl on the ground, and insects that swim in the water. So what is the difference between them? They're all not allowed, they're all prohibited, right? The difference between them is in how many lavim, how many prohibitions one transgresses if they go ahead and eat one of these types of insects. If you eat a flying insect, then there are actually 6 different prohibitions that a person transgresses. So 6 different negative mitzvahs. Right? There are 613 mitzvahs, of them 365 are don'ts. There are 6 different don'ts that a person transgresses if they eat a flying insect. If they eat a crawling insect, then it's 5. If they eat a swimming insect, then it is 4. Okay? So this is a pretty big deal. It's either 6, 5, or 4 transgressions that a person transgresses if they eat a bug. And as a result, there are lots of precautions that we take as Jews before we eat certain things that often have bugs, that often have insects within them. You had a question? Oh, okay. I thought you opened your mouth. All right. Okay, so that's the introduction. All right, so it's a pretty big deal. This is a pretty big one, and it's unfortunately it's from the lesser known ones. Like, I cannot tell you how many Jews tell me, "Oh yeah, Rabbi, it's okay. I keep kosher, but I was eating in a vegetarian restaurant, and that's fine." And this is one of the big issues with the vegetarian restaurant, along with other ones, but this is one of the big ones. Okay, so the first big question we need to talk about is how large, like, what is the minimum size of an insect? Before I do so, before I talk about that, I want to talk about something. With regards to most prohibitions, there is a minimum size of how big the prohibition has to be in order to transgress, right? In order to be going against the will of Hashem and do whatever it is, right? So let's say, for example, meat and milk, or let's say pig, or any animal that's not kosher. There's a minimum size, right? If somehow a person only eats a tiny drop, depending on the prohibition, he might not be transgressing because there's a minimum amount. By bugs, you have a different issue. What is that? There is also going to be a minimum prohibition. The problem is that often when a person is eating a bug, it is smaller than the required size for the prohibition, but it is still prohibited because it is a complete bug. And as we're going to see, that's also going to be one of the leniencies involved in this, but it's also one of the biggest stringencies when it comes to bugs. So for example, if you take a bite of lettuce, and there's a tiny little bug on it, but that bug, that is the whole being of the bug, that is going to be a prohibition. A complete prohibition, even though it's less than the size of an olive, and it's less than the size of an egg, and it's less than the size of this, less than the size of that. It doesn't make a difference. It's a complete bug, and therefore that's going to be an issue. Does that make sense, everybody? So that's one of the stringencies when it comes to bugs. Okay? But is there any size that's allowed? Let's dive into it. So we're prohibited from eating any bug of any size as long as the insect can be seen to the naked eye to someone with good vision. For the sake of this class, let's say 20/20 vision. Okay, so, for example, myself and Leticia both have glasses. If we take our glasses off and look at a piece of lettuce, there's not going to be any bugs. No. Right? That's it. But we're not talking about us. We're talking about somebody who has 20/20 vision. Somebody who does not wear any sort of corrective vision apparatus. No, what are they called? No contacts, no glasses, no anything. With proper eyesight, you're looking at a piece of lettuce and you see bugs. Now, that is to the exclusion of the other way around as well, right? Which we'll talk about in a moment, like a microscope or a magnifying glass, etc. But before we do that, it has to be visible to a person with proper eyesight, but it doesn't make a difference if it's camouflaged. So, for example, if a bug is green, which is often the case, and it's on lettuce, which is green, right? Are aphids insects? I think they are, right?
Yes.
So aphids they're green, right? Aphids?
We say
Aphids. Okay, aphids. So aphids are green, and they're on lettuce
They
usually,
can be
right?
black, they can be different colors.
Okay.
But there's
They can be
something.
white.
But they're often basically camouflaged into the leaf or green that you're attempting to eat, right? So that doesn't. So just because somebody has good vision doesn't mean they're necessarily going to see it. So you still have to examine it. There is an examination here that needs to happen. So the camouflage doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference what color they are. They're still a bug, but it has to be something that can be seen by a person with proper eyesight. Okay, but if an insect is so small that it cannot be detected by a human eye, so how do we know they exist? Right? They didn't know they existed until 50 years ago, right? And now we know they exist because we can see it under a microscope or we can see it with a magnifying glass. So such insects are not considered insects in terms of the prohibition of the Torah.
So that would account for
What?
living things like bacteria.
So we're about to get to this.
And viruses.
Before we get to bacteria or organisms or things like that, I want to talk first about eggs.
Okay.
Eggs of insects are prohibited just like regular insects. Okay? So therefore when you're searching, you have to search even if you see an egg of an insect.
They're very small.
They are very small. They are very
You
small.
just have to wash it.
This is not how to think. What?
You have to wash
Well, you
it.
have to inspect it and then wash it.
Special
Yeah.
light.
Inspect.
Yeah, they sell special lights that people use. There's a company that I like to make fun of, but the truth is that they do some good work. It's called Ner Mitzvah, which means the light of a mitzvah.
Mitzvah light.
Yeah, it means it means a light of like a candle of a mitzvah. And I think it's because they originally started off selling candles, They definitely have a big line of candles that are good for Jewish things. Lots of different types of Shabbos candles, the ones that fit in this, the ones that fit in that, glasses to hold the Shabbos candles, Hanukkah candles, different types of Hanukkah candles, oil, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's how they started their product line, and that's why they're called Ner Mitzvah. But today, they have a whole lab, and they put out products, innovative products to help with keeping kosher, or to help with keeping Judaism. A lot of those products apply to kosher. So for example, when we get to the laws of kosherizing, we're going to learn about boiling hot water. You have to pour boiling hot water. And the problem is that you have to, so normally you take something and you stick it into boiling hot water. And there's a halachic term called malin aba'abot, which means that the water has to actually be bubbling. There have to be bubbles rising to the surface. So for example, let's say you have a spoon. That spoon, you by mistake used it for something that wasn't kosher, right? Meat and milk, whatever, it's 100% not kosher. And now you want to kosherize it. It's a metal spoon, right? So you take a pot, you boil it up with water. I know we're totally off topic from what we're talking about today, but I just want to explain something. So you boil it up with water, and once it's bubbling, you take the spoon, maybe you hold a glove, or maybe you drop it, whatever it is, and as long as it goes into the water and it's exposed to the water on all ends of it, while the water is bubbling, right? I think you have to wait, because once the spoon goes in, it's going to cool off, and then the bubbles will stop for a brief second. You have to wait until the bubbles start again, you're good to go, right? Now, what happens if you're kosherizing something that cannot be immersed in a pot? Let's say, for example, a massive pot that doesn't fit into any other pot. Or, an even more practical example is your counter, which cannot easily be removed from you. You're not going to take it off. So what do? You pour boiling hot water over it. The problem is the moment you pour boiling hot water over it, even from the air, which is called irui in halachic terminology, even from the pouring, it cools off and now it's no longer bubbling. So the halachic roundabout for that is that you have a brick or a stone. I think a brick is usually what's used. You take that brick and you put that brick into the water. And once that brick is so hot that the bubbles are rising even with the brick inside, now you take the brick out and you pour the water over the brick on the simplest way to do it is to pour the water over the counter and then put the brick down immediately, and then that's good. That's good enough. Okay, now most halachic authorities agree that an iron works for this. You can take an iron, as long as it's on hot, you pour the boiling hot water over the counter, then take the iron, stick the iron down, and then you're good to go. Right? But the technical terminology is a brick. You're basically heating the water up to boiling temperature again while it's on the counter, correct? It's already very close to it, you're just bringing it right back to it. Anyways, so they sell, Ner Mitzvah sells a brick. You think you can buy a brick anywhere, right? You buy a brick at Home Depot. No, they sell a brick
It has a handle.
that's exactly, you've seen it?
No.
That's surrounded by a grate, by a metal grate. It has a long thing and a handle, like a barbecuing tool or something, you know? They sell a brick.
Wow.
It's the cutest thing. And they sell a lot of things like this. They sell bedikas chametz kits. Like, you can buy a set of 10 pieces of bread already wrapped in paper, together with a wooden spoon and a feather and a this, whatever, you know. You're all set for searching for the chametz.
What's the name
They
of the
sell
company again?
Ner Mitzvah. Ner, N-E-R, and then Mitzvah. M-I-T-Z-V-A-H. Anyways, so Ner Mitzvah also sells a bug checking tool. I don't have one, I don't use it. These are all bonuses, you know, they're all just to make it easier.
Bug checking tool?
Yeah, it's essentially like a, let me see if I can find
Like
it.
a magnifying
Let's see if I can find it
glass?
easily. No, you don't need a magnifying glass. Ner Mitzvah bug checking, let's see. You don't need a lot about what? In general. Okay, that's good. Here you go, bug checker. It's basically a light. Okay, but I want to show it to you. Okay, it's hard to see from this image. Anyways, it's basically a light, right? It's like a light board. You put the lettuce down on top of. It shines through. You see, and now I feel bad because it's not even Ner Mitzvah who makes it. It's Kosher Innovations. This is a competitive space. Innovative products. This one is called Kosher Innovations. It's a different company. Now I feel bad. I gave Ner Mitzvah a whole plug. But okay, they're both good companies. Anyways, good stuff. Back on topic? Okay. So the last thing we had said is eggs, but I did want to talk about bacteria. Bacteria is not considered bugs, even if it's something that's visible to the eye somehow. I don't know if there's any bacteria that's visible to the naked eye, but even if there was, it's not. Bacteria is not considered bugs. Those are organisms. It's different, right? So all that's included are insects and their eggs. Okay, ready to go? Okay. What happened? Oh. She's having a sandwich. She doesn't want anybody on Zoom to know. on Facebook. Okay. We are ready to move on. Okay. A worm or an insect or any sort of bug that got mixed into a dish, right? Which is probably going to be the most common situation that we're going to deal with, right? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. The most important thing is to check your produce. Particularly, we'll talk about it soon, and I don't even know if we're going to finish all insects today, but it's probably going to be a half-half situation, half this week and half next week. But obviously the most important thing to do is that there are produce that often have bugs in them, such as apples with worms, right? If you're eating that kind of an apple, obviously fresh apples don't. Lettuce with little aphids or little bugs on them, right? And different types of produce. And there's a whole list in this book, which basically goes through different types of produce that are common to have insects in them. And maybe we'll do that next week. I don't know if I'll go through the whole thing. It's a very long list, but yeah, well, there's maybe I'll highlight some next week before the class. Like that, I'll be able to talk about some of them. But before we do that, I want to talk about a more common instance. I don't know if it's more common, but another common instance, which is you have a dish. Okay, so let's say you have a dish and you're going to put in peppers. You're going to put in lettuce into the dish. By a dish, I mean like you're making a big soup, and inside you're mixing in this particular thing, which could have bugs inside of it. And maybe even it's a bug itself that went in. Maybe even you saw the bug go in. What now? What now? Right? So the answer is like this. If the insect that's inside this dish was complete, and you know for a fact that it was complete, and it's still complete, then you have an issue. The entire dish becomes prohibited to eat until or unless you can find that bug, take that bug out, then the rest of the dish is okay. So for example, let's say not even a dish, let's say you have a cup of water, a cup of wine, a fly falls into it, right? They're going to fly, you move on. It doesn't prohibit the rest of the dish, but it prohibits the rest of the dish if you cannot find the insect. If you know for a fact that an insect went in, and that insect is whole, that's crucial, then you have a problem. Why? Because remember, it doesn't. Okay, so why is that? Let's talk about why that is. So first of all, remember that it's never going to be less than the amount that it needs to be. Why? Because it's any size of an insect as long as the insect is whole. The moment the insect becomes not whole anymore, you have a whole set of leniencies you can get into, which we're going to talk about just after this. But for now, let's talk about bittul. Bittul is nullification. You're all familiar with this, right? 1 versus 60, 51 versus 49. There are different halachic different halachic scenarios in which the food becomes nullified. I'm sorry, the issur, the prohibition becomes nullified vis-a-vis the food, right? But when it comes to a bug, that all of a sudden doesn't apply. Why is that? That's because of some rules with regards to nullification. And one of the rules with regards to nullification is that something that's a complete object can never be nullified. If it has its own name, it is a complete object. I can't really think of examples when it comes to meat and milk, but I'm sure there are examples when it comes to meat or milk as well. Normally, when we think of meat or milk, we think of a drop of milk that falls into a big tub of meat, or a drop of meat that falls into a big tub of whatever ziti with cheese, whatever it is, right? But let's say it wasn't that. Let's say it was an object that fell in. Maybe it's a massive tub, so somehow you still think you could have 60 against it. You would have that same issue. But with regards to bugs, you almost always have that issue. We'll talk about when you don't in a moment. So therefore, because it's an actual bug, it can never be nullified. So every spoon of soup that you take into your mouth, there's a bug that you saw. Let's say, I start giving examples. Let's say a piece of produce that you put in that had a bug inside it. But let's say you had a pot of soup and you watched a fly, fall into it. But it's a tiny fly, and then I don't know, maybe somebody mixed the soup around. Now you don't see it anymore. But you know that the fly went in there. When the fly went in there, it was alive, and then now it's dead, right? And it's whole. So you have an issue because every spoon of soup that you take might contain that fly. Now, if it's a big fly, so then you're actually allowed to take each spoon of soup, and as long as you look at it, you don't see the fly, you're allowed to eat it. Oh, but there might be a little piece of the fly, that's not an issue. As long as you don't see the actual fly inside, you're good to go. But let's say when you watched the fly go in, you saw that it was so small you're not going to be able to see it. Or maybe the soup is of a type, let's say it's a dark colored soup, and it's not translucent like chicken soup, which I think is what, at least that's what I think of by default when it comes to soup. And I'm assuming everybody else does. So maybe it's not. Maybe it's some sort of pureed soup, and it's a dark color, and you're not going to see this tiny little fly. And maybe it's a tiny black fly, and this soup is some sort of soup that has black pepper in it, so it has lots of little black spots. So you're not going to be able to see the tiny fly. You're not allowed to eat the entire soup, unless you can remove the fly somehow. And all of this boils down to the stringency that we have here, which is that the soup is never the insect is never going to become nullified because it's a complete insect. Are we on the same page here?
If it becomes little pieces of it.
Let's talk about that now. Yes, you had a question?
Something, as long as the soup is cooking, the insect would probably its body dissipate in the soup. So I was going to say
that's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't know that halacha would let you rely on that.
Wouldn't be
Possibly it would.
Anymore.
You've asked a good question, and I don't know the answer. You're saying, let's say the soup is so hot, or you're going to bubble the soup, or maybe if it's pureed, you're going to puree it again. Mm-hmm. That might be a leniency to let you out.
Because I don't know if insects have bones or not.
It doesn't make a difference.
No.
Okay, so let's talk about pureeing right now, okay? Because that actually is a big leniency when it comes to bugs. Okay, if you pureed or you ground up whatever dish it is that you're making, okay, and the most common example is when it comes to fruit in a smoothie, right? So, for example, strawberries. We'll talk about it next week when we do the whole list. But strawberries are one of the products that you have to check for bugs. Okay. Now, let's say you didn't check the strawberries for bugs, or maybe even worse, you know that there's a bug inside the strawberry, and the strawberry goes into your smoothie. And now you ground it up. Once it's ground up, to such a degree that we know like a smoothie, for example, so to such a degree that we know for a fact that the bug can no longer be whole, so now it's allowed. And it's actually allowed even if there isn't 60 for the amount of the size of the bug. Why? Why is that? Why is that? Because now you have two things working for you. Number one, of course, is that it's no longer a complete object. Because it's no longer a complete object, now it could become nullified. And even if it's only 20, 30% of smoothie versus the size of the bug, like, sorry to be gross, but let's assume it was actually a massive cockroach that fell into your smoothie, and you only have 20 times the size of the cockroach, it does make a difference. Why? Because of the face that Leticia just made. The face that Leticia just made means that nobody wants the taste of the cockroach inside their smoothie, or the taste of the little bug, or whatever it is inside the smoothie. So it's actually considered a disgusting taste. And it actually makes, it doesn't enhance the smoothie, it's actually detracting from your enjoyment of the smoothie. So when it was a complete bug, it doesn't make a difference how much it's disgusting to you. There's a complete bug in here, and you're not allowed to. But the moment that it's only pieces of bug, or taste of bug, or what have you, it doesn't make a difference how much there is. It already becomes nullified completely to the taste of the dish, which is what you actually want to eat. Did that make sense? What I just said that last point?
So you
have
can
two.
eat it if you don't taste it.
No, you misunderstood what I said. You have two leniencies working in tandem here. Number one is it's no longer a complete object, and number two is that the bug is not a desirable taste. Now, obviously, if you want the taste of cockroach in your smoothie, we have a problem. But assuming that nobody wants the taste of the bug inside their dish, which is usually the case, then you're good to go. Why? Because of those two leniencies operating in tandem.
What? You're good to go?
Good to go. So in other words, you can take an actual bug. You shouldn't do this actively, but let's say you're putting together your whole smoothie, right? Big smoothie you have. And you have a fly. And literally as you're about to close the lid, you see the fly in there and whatever, somehow you can't get it out. And now you're going to grind it up. Right? Or maybe if you didn't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So then you're good to go.
Unless you taste it.
So your question is, if it's so much bug that you actually taste the taste of bug,
Some people
I
can
can't imagine this being practical. I can't imagine this being practical. In that instance, it could be that would be a stringency to make it not allowed. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, God.
I would imagine it's not a problem, though. Hirschi, what do you
So you
say?
see a bug go into...
Only to the Evid. It's very important to notice. Only, not to the Evid, which means you don't know you're being Mavat.
Right, so I said, you're not allowed to begin with.
That
Right.
any bugs there necessarily.
Yeah, you're not allowed to put a bug in there. If a bug flies in there, no, it's even if you know.
Even if
you know.
Effect.
What?
Only if you were.
Even if you know, and now it's ground up. Right, of course, if you could take out the bug to begin with, that is the proper direction.
Yeah, of course, that's what you
And
do.
we're obviously talking about Bagel Shishim, of course.
No, he says that's not the definition.
Because nice and Tam Gam.
Yeah, not because that's Gam. Yeah, that's Gam, basically. Is that interesting? It doesn't need to be shishim. I didn't know that. That was something new that I learned when I started bringing it.
Anyways, but it's
I'm sure there's a minimum amount.
see a fly
One second.
in.
I'm sure there's a minimum amount. Yeah, if you could take the fly out, then you could. But if you cannot take the fly out, then you're allowed to eat it. As long as it's ground. You're saying the question is whether you're allowed to turn the blender on then.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder about that. You're saying because then you're actively doing it.
Being Mevatel, basically.
Right. You're saying the case that I gave, you're being mevatel so be a dime, right? I wonder.
So it doesn't seem like there's any difference really between grinding the bug and a whole bug going into a soup that's boiled and it completely...
Right, so that was her
disintegrates.
question earlier. But I don't know that you can rely on that unless there was an active way to know that happened. Her question is, let's say...
No difference as long as it's not a big shleima.
Right, but when it's ground up, halacha says that grinding gets rid of the barrier shlema. I've never heard of halacha saying that if you boil a soup, that automatically makes it not a barrier shlema. I don't know that you can guarantee exactly, and whether it gets dissolved when you boil the soup. I don't know.
And it's very important to note that you're not allowed to do that as part of the plan. This is only if it happened. If it happened, you're not aware. If you put broccoli or something, you don't know that there's...
No, so then you're the one that you don't know the bug. But it's even if you knew there was a bug. So here's a better example. Let's say somebody told you,
Yes.
oh, I saw a fly into that smoothie, and now you already ground it up. And somebody said, I saw a fly in right after you closed the lid. That's in there. Now you're allowed to eat it.
You're allowed to eat.
What he's suggesting is that if the fly is in there, he doesn't know if you're allowed to actively grind it up in order to allow it.
That makes sense not to.
But you just said what you need to do is
Yeah, but-
if it goes in and before you grind it, you need to find it
But
and
it-
take it out.
Yes.
But if you actively know and are grinding it to eat, to ingest it, then
Let's put it this way. You're not allowed to grind bugs and eat them. Okay? That's a simple way of putting it. You're not allowed to have bugs as an ingredient in your dish as long as they're ground.
yes.
It doesn't go that far in the leniency.
I think it's,
But I don't know the answer to your question about whether halacha would automatically consider boiling to disintegrate a bug, whether it considers it automatically disintegrating it or not, dissolving it.
It's a chemical process. Like
Yeah, it is.
grinding a chemical
It's
process.
the whole thing is a chemical process.
chemical process.
It has to no longer be a complete bug.
grinding isn't a chemical process, it's mechanical.
Right, but it's whatever. You understand what you're saying.
Boiling is a chemical, it does.
Okay, folks, we're going to stop here for today. We're going to pick up on bugs next week. There's much more to say about bugs.
I'm so confused.
And if you're confused, don't worry about it because I'm going to have to give an introduction. I'm going to have to give a little bit of a recap next week because there's going to be more people here.
Yes.
And because it won't be Father's Day, there'll be a couple more people.
Yes.
And we're going to be picking up the conversation, so we're definitely going to have to give a little bit of a review.
Yes,
Okay?
very good.
All right. See you all next week.
Thank you.